Good evening. I appear before you to report on the progress of the war waged in Spain and the whole world against the COVID-19 pandemic, and also to inform you about the latest decisions and actions taken by the government of Spain. These days, any communication must begin with a heartfelt remembrance of the victims and families of the victims of COVID-19. Spanish society shares the pain of loss and also the impotence of abrupt grief suffered today by thousands of people in our country. I also want to send a message of encouragement, of hope, to those admitted to hospitals and to those who endured the illness from the isolation of their homes. I send you all strength and I wish for your speedy recovery. Amid the overwhelming reports of deaths, today we've received the news of the discharge of more than 12,285 members of the public who have been cured. Many of these patients are also elderly people and belong to risk groups, which is a ray of hope. As you know, the pandemic has already started its spread across all continents. It is the greatest threat to global public health since the 1918 flu and is hitting our continent, Europe, very forcefully. Europe is right now the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic. The European Union, and as is known, and it must be remembered, has its origins in the purpose of 6 nations that wanted to avoid the repetition of 2 world wars, which during the first half of the 20th century had erupted within the continent and which had extended the destruction to the whole world. The purpose of avoiding a 3rd World War is the historical seed of the EU, and it has succeeded in that endeavour. In its nearly 70 years of existence, Europe now faces a different challenge, which is to wage a united war against a common enemy, an enemy that's decimating the health of its citizens wherever they live, and it's threatening not only the social welfare but also our economic progress. This is a deadly journey which started in the East and is now located in Europe, more precisely in countries like ours, as one of its first stations before making new stopovers, as we've already seen, and spreading all over the world. Europe has not created this virus. Europe has not called for or attracted the virus, nor has any country in Europe, such as Spain, nor any other country in the world. The virus has penetrated Europe on a random journey, and just as this catastrophe is putting to the test the whole world, it's also putting the European project to a very special test. It is the time of greatest difficulty since its creation, and the EU must live up to the challenge given these circumstances and should not disappoint its citizens. Our generation still remembers the economic crisis of 2008, the delay and limitations of the European response to this economic disaster. This time Europe cannot fail, it must not fail, because even the most European countries and governments, as the case of Spain, need evidence of real commitment on the part of the European Union. We need to see that Europe is listening and that Europe is acting. We need forcefulness and we need solidarity. These are the 2 ideas I conveyed to the European leaders in the past Council. Europe, it's been said, and it's true, it's slow, but it's safe. It has 2 heavy decision-making mechanisms because we are many member states, 27 after the UK's exit, but it also has the strength to be a transnational political system, the most robust and powerful in the world. So if Europe wants to, Europe can. Spain is calling for brave, forceful decisions from the Union. In particular, we want measures to combat the health emergency, such as ensuring the availability of essential health resources in a moment when the global market is being very aggressive and it's being difficult to access certain critical supplies. I'm thinking of the intensive care and also material for our healthcare workers, the state security forces and the staff of care homes. We need coordination to ensure the repatriation of all EU citizens who want to return from abroad, and we need a joint cybersecurity to shield all member states in the face of hoaxes, unfounded rumors and cyber attacks in these times, in these difficult times of uncertainty and social distress. Some of these measures have already been agreed and we celebrate it, but Europe must also provide a united economic and social response, because this affects us all. It doesn't obey borders, and therefore it needs a united social economic response. Europe must, if I may say so, put in place a kind of war economy and promote the resistance and then the reconstruction and recovery. It has to do it as soon as possible with measures to support the public debt, because many member states are taking this debt in order to resolve and deal with this pandemic. And then, once the emergency has passed, it will have to rebuild the continent's economies by mobilizing a large amount of resources through a plan that we've called the new Marshall Plan, which has to have the support of all EU institutions. Of course, Spaniards have protected Europe. We have done so every time we have gone to vote, every time we've spoken out in favor of strengthening Europe. We've always opted for strengthening our common project, and it's now up to Europe, the EU, to protect all European citizens, the weakest, not only those countries which are suffering the greatest consequences of the COVID pandemic, such is the case of Spain. This is what I told them, the rest of presidents of the EU states, and I repeat it publicly. It is the time of the European Union. So let's make the blue flag of the 12 stars to take root forever in the hearts of Europeans. Europe must rise and not support speeches of those who want to weaken it, who wants to weaken the common project. The European Council was not the only major event we attended this week, and in all the meetings in which Spain has participated, for example, the European Councils or the G20, which brings together the largest economies in the world, in all of them we've been able to see the global dimension of this pandemic, the virus. We've seen it in first person, first hand. It does not respect borders or distinguish between governments of one or another political color. Conservatives and progressives from all over the world, and also in our country from different territories, sooner or later will be in the face of the same realities and the same shortcomings. We all try to stock up on the same resources: face masks, gloves, ventilators, gowns, and we're all doing it. Every government in the world is doing it, because none of us had in mind the magnitude of the challenge in front of us, and obviously the magnitude of the amount of resources we needed to cope. This pandemic has once again reminded us of very elementary things. The fragility not only of our civilization, but also of human life. It's the whole humanity that it's being tested. We've seen it in these last few days in the media. The pandemic acts blindly. The virus has managed to ground our planes, close our schools, stop our productive system, make our hospitals collapse. It has cancelled the normality of our lives. More than a third of human beings, and I want to stress this figure, are currently confined to our homes to fight the virus, and we are fighting against this common enemy. By repeating it, we had all forgotten something that's particularly evident today. We are facing already global threats, and we do not have global response mechanisms that are enough to meet the challenges ahead. In the meantime, in Spain, we live the hardest hours. We said it last weekend. This week is going to be very hard. We are facing the saddest, toughest hours. As we approach the crest of the wave, the virus is beating us with ruthless violence. And when the battle becomes more intense, as it's happening right now, when the greater the ravages, when we approach the crest of the wave that hits us, it's not the time to let our guard down. On the contrary, it's time to and intensify the fight. I'm convinced, and this is also attested by all scientists and experts who advise the government, to which I will always be very grateful. I'm convinced that the measures we are implementing are having an outstanding mobility reduction, being the highest peak of reductions during the weekend. It's the weekends when the reduction in mobility in transport is more obvious, is significant. And thanks to the measures that we've implemented, we are in the right direction. Now, if we are able to extend the weekend mobility over the next 2 weeks, now that we are approaching Easter, then we will defeat the virus sooner. That's why I would like to inform you that following the recommendations of the experts of the technical committee, and after communicating it to the social actors, which is businessmen and trade unions, we have taken the following decision. I would like to announce that tomorrow, during an extraordinary Council of Ministers, the government of Spain will adopt an exceptional measures. All workers of non-essential activities, I repeat, all workers of non-essential activities must stay at home during the next 2 weeks, as they do over the weekend. To this end, we will approve a paid leave that can be redeemed in the future. That will be approved tomorrow, and it will apply to workers of all non-essential activities, so that they will not have to commute to their workplaces from Monday, the 30th of March, the day after tomorrow, until Thursday, April 9, both included, from the 30th of March to the 9th of April. During these days of paid leave, workers will continue to receive their wages as usual, and once the emergency is over, workers will gradually redeem those working hours over time. These measures will further reduce people's mobility. There will be less transport. Thus, it will reduce the risk of contagion, and it will allow us to have more space in intensive care units in our hospitals. Social actors are aware of the huge country effort that we must all make now to combat the virus and then to rebuild it economically and socially. We are all united in the face of this crisis. This is the greatest exercise of solidarity in our history. I'm convinced that social dialogue is and will remain fundamental in Spain. This measure can be very effective in our collective strategy against the virus, and we will implement it, and we do it because experts recommend it, and Spain is ready to enforce it immediately. We are at the right time, and I hope that soon, in the coming days, we will notice the effect of this powerful collective effort. That effort we've been doing since we've been confined, and that means that fewer people will get infected and get to our hospitals, so that our health care will have more time and resources and will be able to do its work properly. But in the meantime, all I can offer is sacrifice and stamina. Sacrifice, stamina, and a moral of victory. When a catastrophe of such a magnitude, like the ones we're experiencing, comes, there are two possible attitudes. There are those who take advantage of the situation to voice the gravity of the situation and spread fear, and others are in self-denial. There are those who seek guilt, and others who work for solutions. There are those who foster spite and division, and those who work for union and loyalty, those who strive to gain some advantage, and others who go out of the way to help. For me, one of the most wonderful discoveries during these past weeks is that the vast majority of Spaniards have opted for work, for solutions, union, help and solidarity. The vast majority of our country fellow men of all latitudes, ages and professions are fulfilling their mission in an exemplary way. And for me that says a lot. It says a lot of the greatness of our country. Young children who endure a lockdown that it's as necessary as forced fulfill their mission. Our school children are doing it, and they must take responsibility for studying and doing their homework at home. Our teachers are doing so, who strive to continue their students to get trained in such complex circumstances. Our young people are doing it. They are isolated to protect themselves, but especially to protect their loved ones and the elders. They are fulfilling their mission, and in what a way? Our healthcare workers, they are giving their professionalism and also their humanity. Our public servants, the military, the police officers, I pay tribute to the civil guards who died in the last hours. The farmers are doing it, the cleaners. In short, public leaders must humbly set an example of all of them and fulfill our missions. We must let ourselves be guided by the experts, only by them, to face the citizens and work to find the solution, as we are doing it, to combat the only enemy that is threatening us in this war, the virus. These days, everyone in Europe and in Spain, at work or at home, has to choose between cynicism and commitment, between selfishness and generosity, between defeatism and the morale of victory. One more day is one less day, one more day to help defeat a war against the criminal enemy that takes lives, that sows economic devastation and human desolation. We are one day closer to hug each other again and to enjoy the great country that we are. These are very hard days, very sad days, very bitter, but these are decisive days, because it will be the days we will have to measure ourselves, and then we will have a lifetime to remember that in difficult time, resistant, united, Spain made it.